Yeehaw! That's
Last one.
the last time I'll use the cowboy intro.
I mean,
And
you might
why?
use it again when you're in revisions, but
That's true. That's true. But I don't know. It feels like the end of an era. Because I finished the cowboy book. For anyone who didn't know, because I have not been shutting up about it, but I
Steve
finished
finished
my
his
cowboy book.
book.
The first draft is done in the bag in the bank. I've taken copies. I've taken backups. I've taken backups of the backups.
Good.
Um, so I'm just gonna let it sit and kind of ferment, but in a French way. Uh,
Yes. Yes. Excellent
and kind
idea.
of age like cheese, maybe. I don't know. Before I dive into revisions, because I just need to get some distance, because I spent a year and a half writing that book. Um, yeah, beloved cowboy intro. It is very beloved. I wonder what I'll task Katie with next. Not that she's not busy writing her own book, but obviously she got to cater to me and my intro needs. Um, but yeah, that was the last time for now, I think, that I'll use the cowboy intro, and I'll have to come up with something else later. Um, Speaking of beloved, I'm joined today by Malin. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Thank you once again for your service to the country by joining me on yet another craft stream.
You
Today
know I
is
love
a
them.
I know, I'm being facetious. I think I'm being facetious if I understand that word correctly. Um, Today is another writer's chat. We're talking about, as the title says below this window, The Story Grid by Shawn Coyne. She's a doozy, this one. She's a college textbook.
This is my Kindle.
She's a college textbook. And we're talking about her today. I had some banners prepared. I should probably pull them up. Let's see. Nope, that's
So
Bird by Bird.
I
That's
feel
not
like I
her.
should give a fair disclaimer, which is that I read the first part of the book at the very beginning of the month and then took a long break of like 2 weeks and then read the rest of the book in one go. And I was so ready, everything was in my head, but then you had to finish your book, which takes fucking priority, obviously. And then
Yeah. I
I
was
won't
like,
lie, I feel like there's already things that are escaping me and I've forgotten about a week later. So
I prepared talking points, so don't you fret. And I think
I've
the
got
major parts of the books that I want to talk about are at the back half. So,
for
and you
me,
have
it's
your
like
notes.
annotations, and
Yeah.
also I only started taking them from page 83 onwards. So anything before that, I've forgotten what happened, just in case.
So just a bunch of intros. So we're not going to dwell on that. But yeah, we're talking about the story grid by Shawn Coyne. I think I've prepared two subjects. I want to talk a little bit about genre, and then I want to talk a little bit about the editing tools that he kind of provides you with.
Yes.
And of course, if you have anything you want to talk about, Malin, dive in at any moment with whatever you want. I prepared my points, and if you prepared some points, or if there's anything particular you want to talk about, feel free to jump in. If anyone watching has read the book and want to talk about something or have any questions, let us know, and we'll answer to the best of our abilities. And I'd say we're two capable craft book readers at this point, so we might be able to answer. Who's to say?
We've read a few now. We can
We've read
actually
it.
compare between them now, which is crazy.
I think for June, I'm not going to do a craft book. I'm going to do a craft book ranking for June, I think, a video. So
Yes,
maybe
finally.
just a regular stream at the back end of June. Um, and
We've been
kind of just
asking for the tier ranking video for a while now.
kind of tier rank all the books, in some sort of system. I don't know yet. These are just vague thoughts. And then, that's the end of the first season of the craft books. Then I think I, for real, will put a little break in them. I said
I'm
that
gonna
after Christmas, but
I think I'm gonna wait until I've seen your tier ranking because I'm extremely curious. But I need to probably also do a video at some point where I talk about my favorites or just, you know.
it's going to be a live stream. It's not going to be a video.
Oh,
Don't
okay.
don't worry. Don't
Damn
worry.
it! Damn it!
I don't have the skills to make YouTube videos.
You
But
do.
yeah, we're talking about Shawn Coyne, the story Grid. It's been around for almost a decade, about a decade, I think. This is a
No.
revised edition.
Is it?
Um,
I didn't even know that there was a
Not a
previous.
revised, but this is like a newer. Let me see actually when this is
Hmm.
before I lie to you all. Um, oh, it's print number 10. Oh yeah, copyright 2015. So it's 10 years old at this point.
And it's a good
Um,
indications that they've printed it several times and it's still
Yeah,
quite.
I'm on print run number. I never understand the print runs things. I think I'm on print run number 10 question mark because it says 1 to 10. Don't they remove a number every time they print one? I don't know how these things work. But anyway, this is I think one of those books that I mean, you can obviously benefit from newer, examples. He uses Silence of the Lambs a lot as an example.
Yeah.
He also
Well,
uses
it doesn't bother me as much as, like some of the other craft books we've read use the same examples over and over again, and they're often like a movie or something, and it's just like, okay, get on with something more recent or different or whatever. In this specific case, he's just like, let's do a case study example, one big one, and he goes through it in its entirety. So I feel like that's more fair. Like I don't mind that as much.
I agree, and like at least it's a book, so
Yeah. Yes. True.
I'll take yeah,
True.
I'll take what I can get. I had some notes prepared on the author. If my there you go. Shawn Coyne is North American. He's been in the industry for there's a picture of him here actually. If you're wondering what it looks like, smash or pass, smash or pass,
Mm.
smash.
It's giving a bit Steve Jobs, but poorer, you know?
It's giving Steve Jobs, but dad. I don't know.
Yes. Yes.
And
Exactly.
that's completely my type, just missing the little turtleneck. North American in the industry for 30 years. He's been working at a big five for 25 of those years as an editor. So I'm fairly confident he knows what he's talking about. He mentioned a bunch of authors he's worked with. I recognize some of the names. He says that he's edited over 100 books for the publisher, making something like $150 million in total or something. Not really that interested in like the money schemes of it all.
Mhm.
He also has a podcast, as all men do, called The Story Grid, which is up until like episode 285 or something last time I checked.
Pretty good.
Talking to other writers, editors about a bunch of different topics within the editorial craft. Um, he also has a website called storygrid.com where you can
Yes.
sign up for master classes and you can get editorial services. And he has a bunch of editors that works for him. Basically, a casual imprint, not an imprint, a casual editorial house. Maybe I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, pretty accomplished by the sounds of it. And the little info I did kind of just picked up and looked at seemed to be correct. So definitely, I think he knows what he's talking about, and that's also the impression I got while I read the book.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything more to say. He's a guy with glasses. Smart people with glasses. You can trust them, like Malin.
And I know that in his book, because I've got the Kindle version, obviously, I didn't have any of the printed, there's some elements that are, here's a big four-leaf clover or whatever, like some of these things. They're all on his website for free. So there's a few free resources on his website, which is quite
I
useful.
have downloaded a few of the images that I think
Nice.
I'm going to share, and we can because they kind of talk about big concepts that he talks about. So I think that's a nice getaway point for us to talk
Yeah.
about. But maybe we should say hello to some people. I forgot about that. Hi, Wallace. Love you so much. Hello, Jessica. How's Baby Berry? Colin. Katie is here. Elena is here. Lavender is here. And Wendy is here. And Becca is here. The timing of this being at my lunchtime and while there's a severe thunderstorm is pretty nice. I'm happy to be your thunderstorm ambience any day, Jessica. Anna is here and JC is here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Um, as I said, I think we're going to do a chat a bit and then a sprint and then a chat a bit. And then if we're feeling naughty, we'll do another sprint and then a little wrap up at the end, depending on how much we talk. I know that me and Malin are inclined to
Yeah.
meander in topics, or yeah, if you will. But yeah, that's the intro. That's the intro, I think.
Nice.
Um, I did want to share one quote that's kind of like the umbrella logline, I guess, for the book, which is something he said in the book, which is that the story grid is a way to analyze, edit, and construct compelling stories with precision. Is that like a thesis statement we can stand by at this point in time, Alan? We're going to talk through it, but
Yeah, I think the only part that is always a bit iffy for me is the with precision bit because I I feel like it's quite a mathematical method, so I can see how that would work for people who wants to know where should this fall, where should this fall, etc. But I don't fully agree that that's the method to end all methods. You know, like it's okay to be a little bit more weavy
It
wavy.
says a way, not the way.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And
But
he's very, I think he's very like, this is how I do it. This is has helped me. And if it
yes,
helps you, great. If it doesn't, you know.
true. But the way that I would use his method is I probably wouldn't use it with precision.
Oh, okay. Because we're gonna go through like the whole spreadsheet situation and some tools he has later.
Yes.
But I was like, oh dang, this is in depth. This is,
Yeah.
you're checking every nut and bolt in this story.
I know that I often joke that I'm type A, but I'm actually not. I generally would not be able to be like, all right, at this word count, this needs to have happened, etc. That's just not how I write. I'm still an artist at
Um,
heart.
I s- I agree. Like, I don't think I can do extensive outlines, but I think my brain is wired in a way that I can benefit greatly from very prescriptive editorial tools.
Yeah.
And he sure does provide prescriptive, not prescriptive, but adaptable,
Very method based, very formula based type of tool, which I think is
very
useful.
organized. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And as a writer, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like this was very like, okay, so this is a way we can do it. So I'm gonna try this for sure for the cowboy book and see, because he has literally a step-by-step like edit guide. Like this is what you do first. This
Yeah.
you take this many days. This is what you do second. You take this many days. This is what you
Yeah.
do third. You this take this many days. Then you did
And
this
that's
and
where I'm like, I'm not actually gonna do that. But I'm taking bits I
oh,
like.
I mean, this is a book, not a cop, so he can't make you do anything.
True.
But yeah, definitely, I like the prescriptiveness of the editing stages that he mentioned, and I think it's a good way for me to kind of get a work through to my story because I pantsed it, and you can tell. So I think
And having
having
an editing tool after you've fenced the story, I think is really helpful. Like any sort
and I
of
think that's
tool.
kind of the process that I need. That I need to have the
Yeah.
freedom to write whatever I want to write, but also need to have the tools to shape it into a book once I'm done. And I feel like
Yeah.
this spoiler alert for me was, a tool that I'm very interested in trying when I get around to it. Anyway, that's like the big picture pitch of the book, I guess. A way to analyze, edit, and construct compelling stories with precision. And there's a couple of things he talks about that I want to talk about. One of them being genre,
Mhm.
specifically what he refers to as external content genre and internal content genre. I have a little flower image to kind of illustrate that, but I just want to go over the definitions first. These are ripped straight from the book, so I did not invent this, but he says that there's the two types of genres. There's the external content genre that defines your protagonist's external object of desire, what they want, so the type A story basically. And then the internal content genre, which defines your protagonist's internal object of desire, like what they need, the lesson they need to learn. So the B story. Um, and he has a picture. Let me see if I try to share image files. Is this working? I pre-downloaded this.
Yes.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
I think we can't see much because of the banner. Maybe if you get rid of the
I'm
banner, we
gonna
can see.
move it. Don't you worry. I'm gonna move it. Bloop. Nope. Bloop. But can I zoom while I'm here? That's the question. Because I
I
feel
don't know.
like oh, you can't really see that, can you?
Mm,
What if because I also save the screen sharing, so maybe I can share that instead. And then do a little
yeah.
zoom.
Yes.
Oop, did that work?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
zooming. Yeah.
Okay, maybe a little too much. But basically, this is him explaining the genres. And one of the things I liked a lot about this book was that he had very extensive lists over external genres. So he has like action. He even had Western. He has
Yeah.
romance. He has horror, and he has like basically these scenes are tropes you should have in a thriller. These scenes are tropes you should have in a Wild West story. Very he calls them something, but I forgot. I should probably written that down. But yeah, it's basically, these are the tropes that the reader expects, because the genre isn't only about marketing, but it tells you what the reader expects from your novel. So I guess
Yeah.
it's a little bit about marketing, but
What I immediately liked about that intro section and this mention of this like pattern is that he talks through his own research to get to that point and saying if you read a lot within a subgenre, then you're going to figure out, okay, what works and what people are expecting, or this should happen at this point. Like, for instance, the thriller genre will have the hero at the mercy of the villain moment. Things that you don't get into detail as much when you use something that's a little bit more overarching, like Save the Cat. So I like the specificity of in certain genres you have these certain expectations, but I like how adaptable it is because just explaining you can do your own research, like just read a lot of comps and see what happens when. And for some reason, that's the one main way I've used it so far is when I'm struggling with my outline on Project Alien, I've been going to check Save the Cat beat sheets of similar books or movies to see, okay, where is this happening? Because that's a similar moment that I've got in my story. Oh, it's happening at that point. That makes sense to move it there, etc., etc. So kind of just like it's not even just his method, it's just him saying, just like analyze everything and you can find all of this trove of information. So yeah.
uh, God, it was difficult navigating two windows. Let me.
Yeah.
I think this maybe is the best one I can get. This is like the genres he mentioned. You
Yeah.
have the dark spots. I'm touching the screen like you can see my hand. You have the dark spots, which is like the external genres, and then you have the light part of the petal, which is the internal. Nope. Yes, the internal genre. So as you can see, he has action, crime, thriller, love, society, western, and all of these he lists tropes for and like genre expectations, what the reader expects. And you can see kind of the little lines. You could just Google genre clover, I think he calls this,
Mm.
uh, if you want to look at it yourself. But you can see like he has, for example, for Western, there's the classical transition, vengeance, professional. For war, he has propaganda, brotherhood. For love, he has courtship, marriage, obsession. So he lists like subgenres of the genres too. So it was very extensive, which I really, really liked. And as someone who just wrote a Western novel, I was like, oh, okay. So these are the scenes that I should have in my Western. Um, and it doesn't feel prescriptive, but
Mm.
he does say like, I mean, obviously, we all know tropes, and tropes are not a bad thing. And that's basically what it says. Like, if you pick a genre and then use tropes from that genre, and then he has suggestions for tropes,
Yeah.
which I really appreciated. I was trying to find like a page that I could show just so you kind of get, for example, oh, love that for
Oh
us.
God.
For example, the Western genre, he lists like classical Western, vengeance Western, transition Western, and
Yeah.
professional Western, and he gives a little description of the genre and like what to expect. And the same for the other genres. So let me just get this. God. Nope. Nope. Where are you? There you go.
No.
Um, so that's one of the things I really liked about this kind of clover. And then the other petals, this is like, I don't know, this is the time. So like how long is the novel? Is it short form, long form, medium form? Structure, mini plot, arch plot, anti-plot. He talks about reality, is it fantasy, realism, factualism, absurdism? And he also talks about style, so like drama, comedy, literature, epistolary, cinematic, musical, etc.
Yeah.
So all in all, I thought this was a really uh, helpful tool, and
Yeah.
I kind of, you know, it got me thinking about, okay, what is actually my story about, and what do I actually need to include in it?
Yeah.
Uh,
Same, because I think he also mentions like mashes of genres and things like horror and thriller are often one like together, very often used together nowadays, things like
yeah,
that. So
and like you can have a Western genre for your, big plot story, but then you can have a love genre for your subplot, for example, or a
yeah.
crime. So it very much is intertwinable.
Yeah.
And as someone who's always kind of struggled with, you know, I know what a B plot and an A plot is, but I struggle often to kind of think of it as two sides of the same coin, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
it was really helpful to sort of see that. So that's one of the images he linked, and I let's see, let's just remove this. And I really thought it was useful.
Yeah. Same.
Uh, I also want to just quickly show another graph. He has a lot of images in his books, which I appreciate as a visual learner.
Same. Although it was probably a little bit harder for my Kindle than having it printed, which is why
Oh,
I'm glad that they're accessible on his website because then can see it in big and not have to
yeah.
constantly try and zoom in, you know?
This is like one of the things he talks about you should do first is to look at your plot and decide where on this story bell curve you want to go. As you can see, the graph makes a curve, and upward going is potential audience. So basically, do you want to write literary fiction or do you want to write commercial fiction? Um, and then anti-plot on the other side.
Yeah.
So, and then arch plot in the middle, which is kind of like the mainstream commercial fiction. So
Yes. Which
you
is
need to
where I
decide.
probably lie.
This is very much where I also lie. And he talks about you need to know these things before you start, trying to pitch your story. Because if you don't know what your book is about, then how the hell are you going to share it to someone else?
Yeah.
Uh,
And
so I
it's
really,
very interesting as well because he does go through marketability of books, which not many craft books talk through, I think. But I appreciate that that's a point in his theory is you can write this more literary subgenre, etc., but you might not access the same audience and think about who you want to access, etc.
mm, a little update on baby Rachel Berry. She's good munching on rolls because that's what she wanted for lunch, which is so valid of her. Malin shared the genre flower thingamajig.
That's
Thank you
what a
so
clever
much.
is. Yeah.
So yeah, I really like that intro. I will say though, and I'm not sure if I like this or if I hate this, but there is a lot of theory in this book. It is very.
Yeah.
This felt like taking a class on writing, I will say.
Yes, and the part where he goes into detail at the beginning on the clover thing, when I read it at first, I was on my train and tubes back from a night out, and boy, was that a bad idea because I did not retain very much at all.
I think it's one of those things where
Fortunately,
I'll go back and reference
yeah,
and not
fortunately, he goes
necessarily.
back through some of the leaves in particular in later stages of the book, and I was like, okay, now I get this. But when he first introduced the concept in the book, I was like, this is so complicated, and my brain cannot comprehend this.
He did the same thing with the like that spreadsheet thing he did, where
Yeah,
he shows you the entire spreadsheet,
yeah, and you're
and
like,
I'm
what
like,
the
what the
fuck?
fuck am I looking at? And then he explains what all the bits
And
and
then you're
pieces
like, okay,
is.
that makes sense. Yeah. But
Yeah.
the first intro
Um,
to it, I was like, what?
but yeah, I definitely felt like I was taking some sort of class on writing, which is what I wanted, and which is what it promises. And
Yeah.
I think, once you kind of start to understand sort of the building blocks, it gets a lot easier. But I felt like the learning curve was very steep when I opened this book.
Yeah.
The chapters was really short, which I appreciated. He
Yeah.
does a lot of chapters, and I felt like, oh, I'm buzzing through this book in no
That does
time.
help.
And the structure of having like parts and then talking about each building block in parts, I thought that was really helpful for me.
Hmm.
Uh, did I have any more general thoughts? Nothing that we can touch on later. Um, yeah, and I think just his approach to the editing concept of, editing a book is, didn't I make a banner for that? Stories are about solving problems, basically. So each scene, each act, and each narrative arc should resolve around a central challenge. And I think sometimes it's easy for me to lose the big picture when I'm thinking about small pictures, and it's easy to lose the small pictures when I'm thinking about big picture. Um,
Yeah.
And he
which
went.
he goes into detail about, the each, like the climax and everything. All of these elements have to happen in every, like, as small as you go, in almost like a, how do
Looks like a
you,
Russian doll.
molecules, I want to say, of the story. Like, the smaller you go, each part has its own, beginning, middle, and end, and including like a
Yeah.
scene, as singular as that is.
So he talks like the big story has like you have a beginning act, a middle act, and an end.
Yeah.
Each act, so Act One has a beginning, middle, and end. Each scene has a beginning, middle, and end, and within
Yeah.
the scene itself, you have sequences or beats. Is that what he called it?
I can't
And those
remember.
should also have a beginning, a middle, and the end. And he talks about what he called the five commandments of storytelling, which I think we're going to touch on before we go into the first sprint of the day. He lists this out as every section or every sequence, so like every scene, every act, every like the entire story should have these five things: inciting incident, a complication, a crisis, a climax, and a resolution. And these are things we all know as a writer, I think.
Yeah, it's a good
Um,
reminder.
yeah, because you know that your scene needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you need to have a conflict. What I have never thought about was that, what's he call it? The stasis flip, I think he called it. So you should begin in one
Yeah,
end and then end up in the opposite end. So you
yeah.
should begin happy, end sad, or begin sad, end happy,
Or
or
begin happy but end ecstatic, and then so you can
yeah.
have like a plus plus or a minus minus, so you can go from, but you need always a change, is what
There
he
needs to
said.
be a flip, I think he
Yeah,
calls it. And that I've never thought about. Like obviously, scenes should have conflict, but I never thought about like, the repercussions of that conflict, which
yeah,
sounds silly, I know. But that's one of the things that I really liked. And then, yeah, he talks about how all these five things should be present at all levels of your novel. Um, yeah, and I really, I think that's going to be very helpful when I go back and kind of pick this novel apart and look at each individual scene and be like, okay, does this have an inciting incident? Does it have like a complication? Does it have a climax? Does it have a resolution? Um, and I'm very excited. I want to get back into my story now. I'm not going to do it, but I want to pick it apart right now.
I feel like it's probably making you want to even more now that you've just finished reading a tool that is made for that purpose. So yeah, I wonder, has anyone in the chat read it, like this book, or are we the only ones? Because I feel like I've heard a lot about it before, but not in detail. Like, I just feel like I've seen other people say, I recommend this book. This book is good for this. But like, book talkers, not book talkers, but author talkers and things like that. And I don't know if anyone in our community has read this one and what they think of it. Just
I
curious.
have no clue. I have not seen anyone talk about it, I think.
Okay.
Oop, nope, I'm removing that. There you go, remove from studio. So yeah, the big five commandments. So basically, the beginning, the middle, and the end of a scene and an act should be present in all levels of your novel, which is another one of his points. And we're going to look at some spreadsheets later, I think, and talk about
Yeah.
like micro level and macro level stuff. But I think we're going to go into a sprint first.
And where is the end of, where was this, the five commandments of storytelling in your version of the book?
Oh
Just,
God, page count.
or chapter if you prefer, but page count is fine.
Oof. I just wrote it down as like a general thing. Well, let me see here. The act, and there's the scene, and there's the sequence, and the beat, chapter 48.
Okay.
Why?
Just to compare where I am in my annotations, to be like, okay, where am I?
Oh, okay,
I
sorry, I'm
have
moving too fast.
no, just to see, because a lot of the annotations and questions are literally just me highlighting things. I'm like, that's useful, but that's it. That I don't have
Okay.
comments on it. Things like, even when he goes into details about the different genres, like the action genre, the core value of it, etc.
Well, I wasn't going to dive in specifically into genres and stuff
No,
because I think, yeah. Yeah.
I know it's more from me as well for later if I
Oh,
want to go
gotcha,
back
gotcha,
into the
gotcha.
book, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
why
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
checking
For sure, for sure, for sure.
where we're at. Yeah.
Um, yeah. Let's see here. We're gonna do a Malin timer as per usual.
Yay.
Uh, I should just, bookmark your page at this point. Really, I will say you having the yellow ring around your picture makes it really easy to find you in the list.
I'm
Let's see.
glad
There
that
you
helps.
go. Let's do a classic drink timer first. How long are you feeling in terms of sprint length?
I don't
What are you
mind.
working on? Let me ask now. What are you working on, Malin, these days?
I don't know yet what I'm gonna be doing because I want to continue writing, but I really need to edit this video. I've been ignoring or like more like uh, just being scared of because it's got too much footage and I just don't want to do it. So I probably should be editing a video. So yeah.
Okay. Katie says, "Oh no, not a sprint. I just got caught up after getting lunch. I'm so sorry. I did lay out the ground rules before we started this stream. So,
True. True.
let's see. Present your screen. And I will be writing on a fan fiction because I have completed my
Yes.
novel. So I'm
I
gonna.
can't believe you still have the motivation in you to write. Like I would just want a break from writing. I'd be like, I'm gonna be reading a bunch of books for now, or
I'm kind of addicted though. Not gonna lie.
that's good. That's a good addiction to have.
I don't know. I don't know. I want to write. Wallace says, I've been sprinting this whole time. Lol, 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 lol. I'm at over 2K for the day, but I'm about to do a big delete. So, alas.
Oh,
Yeah, Chad, if you want to tell me what you're working on today, I'd love to hear because I'm nosy like that. We're going to do maybe 30 minutes. Is that's
sounds
good with
good.
you?
Yeah.
I'm going to first listen to the pop, and then we're going to slide it down to 30 minutes, and then we shall be back. Oh, you've caught my mental illness, babe. I don't know. Oh, no. Yes, let's just close that screen. By all
Let's
means.
not sprint.
Um, yeah, I don't know about that, Kitty. I don't know. I want to write. You can't stop me. Let's see if we can. There we go. And then we make this bigger. There we go. Beautiful. 3, 2, 1. Let's do whatever we want for 30 Lovely.
Good.
How did you do for that sprint, Malin?
Good. I went on with the editing the video thing. I feel like my brain was not up for writing, and editing feels more like labor. You know what I mean? Like it's just like manual almost. Like I'm just cutting bits and stuff, so I don't have to think too hard. Um, and I have about 20 minutes footage at the moment, but it's going to be a long one because it is about me finishing draft 4 of The Art of Summoning Demons, so it's a chunky video.
20 minutes is not chunky.
This is like I've barely gone through 3 videos out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have a few more to go through before it's over. I think.
Okay. I stand corrected.
There you go.
And I wrote some more words. I think I'm up to 391 for the day.
How are you feeling about your fan fiction writing? Does it feel different enough that your brain is
Feels
like, yep,
very different. Because A, I'm writing a script, so it's a different format already.
true,
B,
true,
it's fan fiction, so like I have to think about characters and world building,
but not that much.
but not in the same sense where you create original fiction.
Yeah.
Um, and this is a very smaller project than a book because I'm only writing 9 chapters because I'm writing like TV seasons. There's going to be
Yes.
9 episodes, and each episode is a chapter. So basically, there's only 9 chapter, which is like better than the 38, 9, 40 chapters I had in the cowboy book.
True.
Um,
How long are each episode / chapter that you're writing?
I'm done with the first one, and that ended up just above 2,000 words.
Okay.
But I'm also thinking, because usually if we're writing a real script, not quotation, if you're writing a real script, 2,000 words is not long enough for an episode because I think and correct me if I'm wrong, Becca, but I think it's like a minute per page or something. So, this episode 1 is 9 pages, so it would be 9 minutes. So,
Yeah. Okay.
short series. But I'm packing a lot into the series. But yeah, it's just like, oh my God, I forget what she calls it again. Fic something.
Spec fic.
Spec fic. Thank you. I can never remember that.
I was there when we had that chat in the chat, I think.
So yeah, it's not like a real script, and it's not a real script length. But I think maybe, I don't know. Becca's gonna beta read for me, or alpha read rather. So I'm interested to see, if she has any thoughts. Is this all right for a fan fiction, or should you actually try to make it, 40 minutes per episode if you're following the kind of, 40-minute TV series formula? So yeah. Yes, that's right. A minute per page.
So it's crypt, not fic. We're talking about fan fiction, so.
Oh yes, spec script. Sorry, I was just like, yeah, sure.
We were both like,
Um,
it's fic,
But I'm having a lot of fun, which is honestly all I care about. This is like a palate cleanser between, finishing my project and then starting the revision process.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a bit like low stakes because it's fan fiction. I'm not
Nice
going to
and
publish this.
fun. I think it's great to do that because it reminds us as writers, like, oh, writing is fun, because sometimes you lose the plot towards the end of a
Oh
project.
God, did I ever lose the plot of the cowboy book towards the end? Oh my God, I felt that was a slug. And it's kind of weird now, as I was talking about initially, because I feel like I'm somehow unburdened in life when I don't have to draft, which is an awful thing to say.
It's a very strange love-hate relationship with horror books, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm mostly loving it though. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, some days shit, some day good. But I think, at the end of the book, I was not infinitely, but I was considerably more in love with the process than I was at the
Yeah.
start of the book.
And I think it's very
And
telling that you're that excited to get into round 2.
I mean, sure, yeah. And like, the fact that, oh, I just wrote 3,000 words yesterday or on Sunday, but I still want to write to.
Mm.
So I think um, therefore I am, but also I think that having found the joy of writing is maybe like the biggest lesson from that book, without sounding like too cliched.
Yeah.
Kitty says, me currently losing the plot of my book. I just want to pen something so bad. Um,
Yeah,
I
but the
penned
thing
my
is,
book.
this is what happens is like I'll feel the same and then I'll start a new project and I'm like, I'm so excited, and then slowly you get to the same point and you're like, wait a minute.
It's a Spider-Man meme. I've been here before.
Yeah.
Um, when he says it's so hard, but when you finish, it's so crazy rewarding. That end point is so hard to lose sight of. I was talking about. I was talking about. Oh, I was talking to you, Malin, just before the stream. I was like, where did I have this conversation? I was talking to Malin just before the stream, and she asked me, like, have I acknowledged the fact that I finished a book? And I was telling you that I have, like, I'm struggling to internalize it. I don't know why. Uh, but I'm just like, I'm very
It's
much just like,
very
yeah, onward to the next thing.
it's very interesting because it is like watching myself do the same thing when I wrote the end for the fourth time on The Art of Summoning Demons. And then everyone in the comments was like, oh my God, congratulations. And I was just like, yeah, no, I'm going straight back into it now. Like, it's not finished. Like, it's not finished until it's finished. And it's so hard to stop and be like, hey,
Is
I
there a little
did a thing.
pupper? Oh my God! Hello, you
No.
star. Oh,
I
so
don't know if you
cute.
can even see him. He's just
Oh yeah, yeah, I can see him. He's very cute.
hello, baby. Very nice.
Very cute. But yeah, I've really been struggling to internalize it, and I feel like, but I got to do something else.
Yeah.
Uh, and at the same time, like obviously it's a relief finishing a book, but there's also kind of a, and this is gonna sound so stupid, but there's also kind of a grief to it, or like not a grief, but maybe like a sorrow, because I've
There's
been
like
spending
a you're doing something for so long that when you're not doing it suddenly, it's like the loss of doing that thing. It's a weird
very much that, because like
yeah.
every waking moment for the last year, I've been like, oh, I have 10 minutes, I could work on my book.
In a very strange way, and I'm sure there's a lot to unpack there for any therapist watching us, but I feel like when we're writing, it's like for me at least, it gives me that weird purpose feeling that is like, this is what I really want to do, it's my purpose. And when you're finishing a draft and you're suddenly doing something else, you're like, I've lost my purpose.
Yeah, it's a little bit that maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird feeling, but most important thing that I finished it. So,
Yes.
I thought it was pretty well done. Pat on the back for me.
Yes.
Um, let's see. Uh, Lavender says, I'm finishing results sections for the last source of my research project. I already read it and took notes at work yesterday, so it shouldn't take too long. And then update, man, I barely finished the summary paragraph and I feel like my brain is made of cotton. I kept reading sentences like 4 times and still not knowing what they meant. It'd be like that sometimes.
Yeah.
And Wallace says, I'm doing some major surgery in my early chapters and I'm actually really proud of how well I'm doing.
Good.
781 words for the day for Katie. Amazing. Oh my God, that reminds me, you got to cross off finishing a book in our 30 before Katie's 30 spreadsheet. Got to do that. Easy to lose sight of. Yeah. I knew what you meant, Wendy, even if I didn't say it out loud, but I think I said it. It's like you did finish a book that is absolutely insanely incredible, and you should reward yourself for that. But I get that the work isn't done. Yeah, I think that's fair. Some love for Edgar. Hello, hello. Like I didn't even feel like BC was done until I finished the last past pages, and even then I moved on to the next project. Oof, yeah, that's so relatable, hitting me hard. Yikes! I'm sorry for this existentialism, Katie. I think you do feel like that when you finish your first book, but as you complete more books, it's a little less of a grieving feeling and more of an excitement for the next book you start.
Yeah.
That is true. I like diving straight into this fan fiction has been very like fun because I still get to write, I still get to be creative, and it's very my cowboy book is very like emotionally heavy and like there's a lot
Yeah.
of stakes, literally, world-ending stakes. I'm just writing a little fanfic. It's silly, it's about like a witch, and yeah, definitely it feels less stakey. Though there's also a lot of stake here, but it feels
It's
less
also like
serious, so
I
to
feel like
speak.
the first one you finish, you sort of feel like, oh my god, I can do that. Like it's the proof to yourself that you can keep that promise. You can actually go to write the end, and then the next ones you finish are more like, yeah, I've done it again. Who cares? And it's like a little bit less.
For sure. And I've been starting, I guess, two serious books, like two serious attempts at writing books before this, and this was my third attempt.
Mm,
So I was getting into the mindset of like, ugh, I mean, I've given up twice before. Should I just do it again? But then I didn't do it. So, but we're
very
not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about, The Story Grid by Shawn Coyne. This is a writer's
sure.
chat about books, not about writers. This is not a Sprints and Shop talk. That's Wallace's domain.
No, but it's still fun to be able to talk about it in between, especially considering our topic is about a book that's going to help you edit now that you finished with that draft. So the
I mean,
timing's
we
perfect.
we give our little thoughts, like overalling thoughts at the end, but I'm very excited to get to that bit because
Yeah.
I have thoughts. But yeah, the story Grid by Sean Coyne. We were talking about story editing and that stories are about solving problems, and each scene, act, and narrative arc should resolve around a central challenge. And we talked a little bit about the big story, so the entire story, and then the act story, and then the scene story, and like the sequence story. And we also talked about the five commandments of storytelling. Now, here's like the big selling point, I guess,
Mm.
of the book, which is the micro level thing of the book, which is the story grid spreadsheet. And I have prepared some material for this.
Oh, oh.
Well, prepared material, I say, but I downloaded this from the website. Again, it's free up on the website if anyone want to peruse it. And it's gonna give maybe people a little bit of the feeling that you and me had when we like first opened the book and like, what the
You're
fuck are
like,
we looking at?
the fuck? Especially like the graphs thing.
Oh,
Now I
the
finally
graph thing.
understand the
Yeah,
cover, but still, it was freaking me out at first.
yeah. I don't have that, but I do have this bad boy. Can I make it
Mm.
bigger? That doesn't help. Maybe if I move the banners out of the way. Um, I don't know. Can you read that?
Can you
Probably.
zoom in once more?
Once more. I don't know. It's going to be like a Word document where everything shifts.
That's pretty good. I can read that. Can the chat read that?
Chat, call in. Are we cooked? Now you definitely can read this.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. I'm just trying to pull up a little so we know what we're talking about. I don't think that ruins too much. But yeah, this is what he calls the. Yeah, it's a bit blurry. I'm sorry. I've zoomed into 210%. So if you want to look at it, can I just maybe drop a link in chat? Nope. If you want to look at it for yourself, this is sort of the link for that. Um, this is what he calls a story grid spreadsheet, and it is by far the biggest selling point of the book, I think.
Yeah.
I've spoken earlier about like this little engine that you can put your book through to get a story out on the other end, and this is very much is it. Um, I want to show because I was also confused by the story bell curve. I don't have that, but this is. Let's make ourselves big for a moment. This is one of the things in the book that I
Yeah.
was just like, what the fuck am I looking at? And I'm still not
That's
entirely
also on
sure.
his website, by the way. Yeah. There's
Yeah,
a
all the resources are on the story grid website, which is nice. I'll that back. There you go. Can I just make me do this? It's funnier to see people. Um, but yeah, this is the sort of engine that he puts a novel through. And he talks about it as an editor. And there's a quote that I want to share. Uh, if I can find it again, that was commandment number 5.
I'm like, where is it? Let's see if I've highlighted it as well.
It is page 220 in chapter 53, Balin, for
Oh
reference.
God. Chapter 53.
The story structure allergy in me is getting a rash. Yeah, just take a tetanus shot, not a tetanus shot. Take like adrenaline or something. Uh, but he says, and I quote, the editor's job is to help the writer find peace with their work while also doing what's necessary to make the story work as well as it possibly can. And this is the tool he uses, which is as you know, the story grid spreadsheet. And he talks about editing in a bunch of stages, 4 stages, 5 stages. Um, and he also starts this section by saying that first and foremost, get the words down on the paper. Don't think about these things while you're
Yeah.
writing. That is not
I
helpful.
actually highlighted the part where he goes, allow the writer in you to have freedom.
Yeah, this is
And it's
not
like, yes.
this is not writer work. This is editor work. So
Yeah.
don't think about these when you write. Obviously, have a beginning, middle, and the end, and try to make it as cohesive as possible. But every story is salvageable, and you shouldn't think about these things when you write, basically, because this is the creative part of you, and now you're getting into the analytical part.
Yeah.
Um, and it says the stage one is to make a spreadsheet, basically, and then you fill in these three first columns. So scene number, word count, and then the main thing that happens. As you can see, he uses Silence of the Lambs here as his
As
little case study, which I
example.
thought was really helpful.
Yeah, because even though, I mean, I feel like a lot of people know the story from at least having watched the movie,
Yeah.
but he does go through it in detail, and it's such an old book and movie at this point that if you think it's spoilers, then you're the problem. Like, it's fine.
Um, yeah, this is not an outlining tool. This is an editing tool. This is
Mm,
after your draft is done.
yeah.
So you put in these numbers and you kind of think about the value shift. So like, happy to sad or happy to ecstatic. What's the shift in the scene? Because that's something you gotta know. And then you signal the shift with these little symbols. So you go from negative to plus here. So ignored to chosen, basically. And then
And
the turning.
the story event one, I did highlight where he goes, the trick to filling out the story event columns to reduce each scene to its essence, either a single sentence or phrase that will tell you the gist of what has occurred in the scene. But also because I find that it's a good tool for scene solving, like level, when you're just down to that level, you're like, is this a good scene? Is it bad? It's not working. You don't know why. And he's like, if you discover that one or more of your scenes do not have events, you'll find that these are the ones you can cut in your next draft. I was like, yes, I need to know where to cut as someone who's an overwriter. So
Yeah, he definitely say that all scenes should have the shift, and you should kind of look for that in your editing
yeah.
process. And the turning point, like what is the turning point of the scene? What makes it go from minus to plus, from ignored to chosen? And also the point of view character. I did not know that the novel had 9 point of view characters.
No, me neither. That's a lot.
That's a
But yeah.
lot. I have a singular one. But yeah, you mainly fill out these 3 first columns to begin with, and that he said you should do in a day. Wasn't that what he said?
I don't
Just
remember
sit down and number your scenes one through like whatever number you have. Do the word count for each scene, and then do the story event for each scene. And take a day, maybe 2, maybe 3 if you need, but like keep this limited. And if you can't think of like what is the story event, it is okay to kind of just put whatever happens, and then you need to fix that later.
that. Because basically, he's like, if it turns out that what happens is someone walks from point A to point B, then that's not an event. That's just a change
Yeah,
of.
that's not a turning point.
Yeah.
And also one thing I liked that he said is that, what was that phrasing? That writers want to put down what they want to happen and not necessarily what actually happens.
Mm,
I forget the phrasing.
I don't think I
Uh,
highlighted that.
I mean, I should probably have highlighted that if I wanted to bring it up, but and just do it like bird by bird. Just say that today I'm, sitting down and I'm filling out 10 scenes. Tomorrow I'm doing 10 more.
I think
He
that's the
also,
part that I'm planning on completely ignoring is I don't need to refer to his time frames for doing things. Just like, no, I'll just because I feel like it's also really hard to determine what someone's day is going to look like. So how can you tell this should take you a day if you're like, yeah, I'm working during that day. I'm just going to do this for 30 minutes in the evening or something. Like, I don't know. I just thought that
Yeah,
was a bit silly to give a time frame. But yeah.
yeah. One thing he also stresses is that this is like, don't start to fix problems you see in your scenes as you're writing these list,
Yeah.
because you're still in the analytical stage and not the
Just
creative
lay it all
stage.
out first.
Lay it all out, figure out how to fix it, and then make a work list, which is kind of useful. Um, and another thing is that this is very much micro level. You're going scene by scene and seeing, what is the shift, what is the turning point, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such an interesting place to begin because every other person says, you should start with the big picture stuff first. And he's like, you should do this first, fill out this micro level story sheet first, and then you should look at the macro scope
It's
later.
interesting because it reminds me of something we've read in another one of our craft books. I don't remember which one, but I feel like both him and someone else has said that very often your subconscious will have worked out some things you don't realize that will help solve, like fix an issue in the bigger plot. So I feel like that's very useful to know, to be like, don't touch it yet. Like, put it all down on the page first. You might already have a solution that's going to come up to you because your subconscious has it.
The
Yeah.
takeaway to do it fast, I assume, is to keep it all in your head. So doing it all once helps your memory.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much. And I thought that was like, because usually you see like you should focus on the big story stuff and then go back to. But that is, I guess, in the rewriting itself, and not necessarily in this, which is the analytical part of the editing process.
Mm.
But anyway, I just wanted to quickly show this little spreadsheet, and he does it for all 40, 50 something scenes of the novel,
Yeah.
Silence of the Lambs, which I thought was really helpful. And I also think I particularly like this value shift and this polarity shift
Yeah.
system. I think I'm going to try and adapt that. Like, what is the change? Is it positive to negative? Does it change at all? Um, I thought it
Yeah.
was really interesting. And then he's also talking about the macro level, which is convolutedly enough called the Fool's Cap Global Story Grid. Um,
Which I don't know what foolscap means. And I was just confused by it the entire time. And I never once looked it up, of course, because I was like,
I
I don't care. I'm continuing to read this.
I thought it was a mushroom, but maybe it's not. Guess I'm googling level main Fool's Cap.
A
A
size
size
of
of paper.
paper.
Oh, there you go.
Ah,
So, and the reason it's called the Fool's Cap Global Story Grid is because you can fit it all in one page. So I
yeah.
guess that makes sense. What if I do? Nope, not full screen.
I've never heard that term before.
I'm not English, so there's a lot of terms I haven't heard.
I think this is American. I don't think, because American paper sizes and English paper sizes are different. English is the same as Europe sizes, which is A4, A5, etc. But American sizes are like US letter and all that. And so I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, I'm used to A4, A5, A5, etc. And this is like what it calls the macro level story, and this one you do after the initial micro level assessment of your novel. You basically take it all and fill in like one singular piece of paper. I haven't heard that either. Oh yeah, wow, I forgot that term. So you're not
Was
the
real
only
old
one.
school.
So yeah, it's basically dividing paper into different sections and filling out the sections for your story to see if your story works or not. Can we maybe zoom into this beginning bit, maybe?
Nice.
Um, so you fill out the genres that we talked about, like the action adventure, the external bits, and the internal bits. And then you list out the obligatory scenes and conventions. So basically the tropes from your genre, so you know what scenes to include,
Yeah.
point of view characters, the object of desire, and the controlling ID theme. And this is like, the global story bits, and this ties back to him saying you should know what kind of story you're writing if you want to sell it. He does say that you can write whatever the hell you want, but if you want to sell it, this is one way to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And then he goes into the beginning and the middle and the end, and he has this little charge system to see, is it a negative or is it a positive moment? And he lists out the the 5 story pillars for each part. So, the ones we talked about: the inciting incident, the complication, the crisis, the climax, and the resolution.
And you've got the external charge and the internal charge, which aren't
Yeah,
always the same.
no. So this is like the global view of your story. And he says the first thing he does when he gets a manuscript to kind of edit is to sit down, and he does the scene by scene stuff that we showed you earlier. And then he goes and fills in this global story grid to see, like, what is the big picture stuff? Like, what is this novel at 3,000 feet overview? Like, what is going on? And if he can't really, like, he can quickly tell if the novel is working or not based on whether, well, like how easy it is to fill in these things, basically.
Yeah.
And you quickly discover, where are the weaknesses in the manuscript when you do it this way, which, for my logically wired brain makes sense.
I'd be curious about this method within a series. Like I did really enjoy when we read the YA version of Save the Cat, because it went from here's everything you've learned in the first book, and now here we're also going to tackle series and what happens when your book 1 is your act 1 and 2A, and then like just how does that work then? But
I mean, I feel like it's just another sequel, as long as you have, beginning, middle, and an end, and the in betweens.
yeah, it just sounds like this is already like quite daunting when you see it at first. You're like, wow, this is a big spreadsheet of a lot of things, and now you've got to do that over.
I mean, you're not writing 2 books at the same time, like the first. Well, you could be, I guess. People have done
No, but
that
I
too.
think a lot of people would finish off their series in some way if they can, or like the outline of it before they try and publish the first book potentially, because if it is an actual continuation and not like book 1 has a finished story in it, but literally this is the direct continuation, then you want your story to make sense over the span of the 2 books, right?
I guess. I mean, and he says that this is a lot. This is like an analytical editorial approach to the process. It's not going
Yeah.
to work for everyone. I mean, I know that you and me, we're kind of wired for systematic approach, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. And some people are not. And I think this is one that hopefully will work for me.
I think for me this is too prescriptive. Like I would probably take some things from it and learn from those things rather than do the entire method. But again, I like that we've read so many books and so many ways to do the craft that you can sort of at some point pick and choose what works, right? But yeah.
And I think that's the ultimate writing advice. If an advice doesn't work for you, throw it out.
Yeah. And he's quite, I
Um,
think I like his tone in the book because he quite says things like that as well. He's very much like, this will help you, but you don't have to do it.
I mean, yeah, but that's like any writing book. Like a lot of them are very much this is the only way, and a lot of them are like, this is my way, and this is
Yeah.
one of the this is my way books. And he has some commercial success with his
Mm,
with the fiction that he edits, and I found it very interesting to read a book from an editor's point of view and not a writer's point of view.
yeah.
I mean, he ghostwrites novels, so he is a writer, but I think very much in this book he has on his little editorial hat and not so much his writer's hat.
Yeah.
And I think this was just a perfect time for me to read this because I finished my novel. I'm gonna dive into edits. I'm probably gonna put this away for now and then come back to it when I'm ready to.
Yeah. I'd be curious what you think when you're actually using it. Definitely call in when you're doing it.
I mean, I will not shut the fuck up about my own projects. So I'm very much excited to dive into this when I'm getting into the edits. And I think that wraps up the official writers chat portion of the stream, I guess. We've been talking about the story grid by Shawn Coyne. Um, this is the guy.
You did not show the graphs, although they're on the cover, but
Oh,
yeah.
it's on the cover.
Yeah.
Uh, should I show? I try to find the picture of it, but
Yeah. I think it is also on his website, but I don't know which one. There's
I
so
mean,
many
this
things.
this madness. Didn't I show that, or were you not thinking of this?
Yes, but there's like a picture where you have the 2 graphs coming together. Because that's the
Uh,
point, is he's saying the internal change versus the external changes. Do
oh,
these two graphs?
let me just scroll through this 300-page college textbook, Marlon.
I was just gonna try and find it on his website, to be fair, because that might just there's so much story elements.
As I said, I really felt like I was taking a college course in
Yeah,
editing, and that was nice because, some of the books we read are kind of wishy-washy about
oh, it's
the.
I think I found it. Story grid infographic. Is this
Do you
it?
want
No,
to
this doesn't have the two.
share it? I'm just flipping through the novel now. Novel, yeah. You thinking about this one?
Yes, I think so. Although that's
What?
only one part of it, but yeah.
I mean, that's the first one I showed. That has the meeting graphs, didn't you? The two-page spread.
There's like basically one where you see the entirety of it, which is basically what you see on the cover after, and you see like the full graph going over, like doing the curve at the top, and then the other one goes the curve at the bottom.
Oh yeah, but that is this one. I don't know. You can see
Oh, maybe it's
the.
just that I can't see the top one.
I
Yeah,
mean, the
it's
top
too
one is
light.
there.
That's why.
It's
Sorry.
it's like dotted and not full line.
Yeah, it's so much harder to see. That's why. Sorry. Yeah, that must be
Yeah.
the one then. Yeah.
Which is basically this, which is yeah, the external and the internal crosses over.
Yeah.
Makes a little eye shape. But yeah. Let's see. There was some letter discussion. Huh, interesting. Anyway, we're gonna do some review questions. Ms. Malin tries. Who is this book for?
Anyone who's ready to edit their book.
Say I.
Anyone who's finished writing a draft.
Absolutely. I think this is a great starting, because I say like how Save the Cat is a great starting point to learn structure. I think this is a great starting point to learn editing.
I actually don't think I would call it a great starting point because, like you said, it is very much feels like a taking a class, like a master full
Oh, but that's
class.
what I like though. But yeah,
It
not
was
everyone responds
complex,
to
and
that.
I kind of felt like I understand it more after reading other craft books that touch on some of those points. But it didn't feel like beginner level. Do you see what I mean? Like it just felt like
Oh.
if I read that my first time editing, revising anything at all, I'd be like, holy fucking shit, I'm not doing that.
I mean, I'm reading this the first time I'm editing, revising anything at all, and I'm loving it.
You have been writing for a while though. This isn't your first rodeo. Like you have been writing several drafts, even though this is the first one you finished.
But I've never
And
edited.
true. But you have read many craft books. This isn't beginner level anymore for you. You've
Oh,
read
I'm
so
not
many.
saying to read this one first if you're going to read a craft book. Absolutely not.
But I wouldn't say like to someone, read Save the Cat, write your novel, and then read this book. Like that's too much. You need a few
Okay.
steps.
I see your point. I see your point. I see your point. I'm very much like, I love shit like this. So maybe it
Yeah.
just speaks to me personally. But yeah, definitely, maybe not. What's that mean? That's intermediate. I'm a beginner. And I
Yeah.
feel like might be, yeah, you're right. This might be an intermediate book,
Yeah.
and not a very beginner book as Save the
However,
Cat.
I saw that he does have a YouTube channel as well, and it looks like he goes through some of those basic stuff that he talks about in the book. I wonder if maybe that's more
Ah,
beginner level for the same information if you go like one video at a
I do
time.
not know. I just went straight for the good old college class. But yeah, this book is for anyone looking to edit a novel who has some experience under the belt. Do we
I like
concur on
that.
that?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Um, do you see yourself using this in your own process? We've talked a little bit about this.
Yeah. I know that you are going to try it fully. I think I'm going to pick and choose what I like from it.
How very French of you.
I had been starting the process of scene outlining in kind of a similar manner for an office for monsters, and I sort of dropped in the middle because I was back in the no, I need to finish the Art of Summoning Demons trenches. So I dropped at midpoint and I need to get back into it, and I think I might integrate some of his advice in there. and do the positive negative change thing. You know, that part I did not have. And analyze any scenes I've got with the idea of, does it have an event or are they just moving location? Because that's a good one as well.
Absolutely. And I definitely see myself using this in my draft when I pick it apart. I think I'm going to enjoy like looking at each scene individually instead of like the whole picture and be like,
Yeah.
okay, in this scene, is there a change? Are they just talking? Are they just moving? Does something actually happen?
But this is
Uh,
where I am like, I really like the idea of using this as a tool, but leaving what I don't like is there are scenes where sometimes I want my characters to maybe just talk. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe actually something's happening and I've just not realized what it is, you know? But
could be, could be, could be. I mean, there can be a shift in a scene even if it's just dialogue. It doesn't have to be any
yes,
action.
that's true. That's true.
Uh, but me telling you that, hey, Malin, actually, I don't want to be a friend, you would be devastated, obviously. So that would be a big shift for you.
That would be a massive shift.
And we just have conversations. So I don't think he's saying that there needs to be action in every scene. He just says that there
No,
need to be a change.
but that's the like this is the thing where I feel like before everything that I was writing was a little bit more action oriented and now it's less so, and I'm also trying to learn that sometimes it's more revealing aspects of a character and personalities that are still important moments, but there might be a smaller moment within a scene rather than the scene.
Gotcha, gotcha. That makes total sense. Um, roll the die. What is your rating out of 6?
I'd say it's a solid 5. It's
I
like
think
it does everything it promises. It's very, like you said, like learning from a class, which makes me feel like it's either for you or it's not. But even if it's not for you, it's still a solid 5. Do you see what I mean? Like I'm sort of, I feel like it's a very objective sort of method rather than some of the more subjective things we've read.
for sure, for sure. I agree. I think this is a 5. Uh, as I mean, I think it is a lot of theory, a lot of craft theory, which is like
Yeah.
I'm not knocking a peg of it because of that, but I'm just thinking this is not going to be universal. Uh,
Yes, I agree with that. And I think for me, the point on the diet that's lacking is also maybe that there are moments where I thought it's very overcomplicated, and then he gets to another passage and explains it way better. And I was like, couldn't you just have started with this much simpler explanation?
yes, very much that. I think it's
It
very
feels
heavy
like
on the
it feels like it's written by someone who's very smart and is first telling you things that are in their head and you're like, hang on a minute, and then they're then going through the motion of explaining what they mean. You're like, okay, gotcha, but I'm slower than you, so give me a second, thank you.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think as we talked, this is kind of an intermediate book, and if you don't have like the basic knowledge of the craft,
Yeah,
then I think you're going to struggle a lot, kind of just understanding what's being said.
yeah,
But I loved it. I absolutely thought it was a blast of a book. I learned so much about the editing process. I'm very excited to
yes.
dive into it to figure out, like, as you say, what can I pick and choose for my own process. And this was a fun. I don't know about fun. It was still a college class, but
Very useful. That's how I felt
very
about
useful. Yeah. So yeah, definitely a 5.
it. Nice.
Wendy says I might have to get this book. I don't. If you like the college approach to writing, college level approach, then absolutely.
And
Um,
you can definitely get the Kindle version, which is, at least in the UK, was way cheaper. It's still very good to read from the Kindle version, but then I would recommend going on the website and downloading the big images when he's talking through them, because it's a lot harder to zoom in on the little screen.
I mean, yeah, I just like to get the craft books in physical copy. So,
Yeah,
and this, like, I don't know, this was so fun because
I know.
it feels like a
You know,
textbook.
it was like over 20 quid or something, and then it was, a fiver for the Kindle. It was like, okay, there's no question here.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to give this book a try. Oddly, it's one of the craft books I haven't read yet. I think this is a great intermediate book about editing your novel. So,
Yes.
thanks, Stephen Mallon, for this chat. You're welcome. We're doing a public service. Speaking of public service, I have a public service announcement. There's going to be 2 writers' chat this month because I skipped on the last month's one. Well, I pushed it to this week because I wanted to get
rightfully so. You wanted to
I wanted to
finish.
get my novel done, and I got my novel done. So there's going to be 2 craft streams. There's going to be 2 regular Tuesdays now, and then the last Tuesday of the month is going to be another craft stream. I'm having Becca as a co-host for that one, and we're going to talk about this book called, ooh, tiny tiny pictures,
This tiny little book.
called "Refuse to Be Done" by Matt Bell. So that's just going to be our pick for
So
May.
it says how to write and rewrite a novel in 3 drafts. That sounds really interesting. Is this like also an editing book, or is
I
it
haven't read it yet, but I
okay?
think I think it's what it says on the tin: how to write and rewrite a novel in 3 drafts. So
I like the cover.
um, I also love the yellow because a lot of crafting books are red or
Yeah,
blue, but the yellow is
pops a
nice.
bit
And
more.
yeah, so I think very much this is going to be a fun little book for me and Becca to read at the end of the month. Feel free to
Nice.
join us in our little reading adventure if you want to. Um,
How many pages is it? Is going to determine whether I join in your reading adventure.
I don't actually know. It wasn't a horrible amount, I think. Um, Adeshil writes, I give this a 5 out of 6 as well. Still, you said this wouldn't do well for oral books. Which type of stories do you think it would work well on, which not? I think it would work well for all books. I don't think it would work well for all writers, is what I think I
Hmm.
meant.
Mm,
Because I think it is very logical and very structural in its approach to editing. And I think
yeah.
that doesn't speak for everyone.
It's very mathematical. It really feels like trying to apply a scientific formula to creating a book almost.
Yeah, and I don't think that's for everyone. So I think you can salvage any story with this, and he says it. And I also think he's right. I think if
Yeah.
you follow the instructions, follow the kind of spreadsheets, look at your scenes, what is working, what is not working, I think this is a very thorough approach to revising your scenes on a scene level.
And he does say
Yeah.
something I really approve of, which is in order to break the rules, you have to know them first. And it's because it's what I learned as a designer as well. Is like what the creative director of Wired said is know the grid, then break the grid. It's the same with writing. Is if you know the
Know the
rules,
story grid, break the story grid.
exactly.
It's 150 pages, says Becca, so not too bad, Malin. This was a lot of pages. How many pages is
Nice,
this?
yeah.
328 I'm on now, and that's yeah.
I might read
So
along.
I mean, I'm happy to have you in the comments, actively engaging with me and Becca. And I think that's gonna conclude today's business. We've been talking about the story grid by Shawn Coyne. Thank you, as always, Malin, for endorsing me.
Thank you
Uh,
for joining me, as always.
yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Yeah, I agree with that too. Yeah, know the rules to break the rules. Um, Next Tuesday is going to be a regular stream. The last Tuesday of the month is going to be a craft stream with Becca, as I said, and then we are going to do. I'm going to do a tier ranking of the craft books I've read so far uh,
Nice.
for June. July I'll take off because I'll be on Hollybobs. Uh, and then that's the plan until the summer, I think.
When
Thank you so much.
did you not say you also wanted to talk at some point about the Brendan Sanderson classes, or did I dream that? I feel like I remember having a conversation about
You and
Brendan
me are on for that in August.
in August. Okay.
Yeah, I'm planning ahead. So me and Malin are talking about the Brandon Sanderson writing course college class in August. We're going to
Okay.
review that. It's very different reviewing a web series, I guess, compared to a book. So I'm very
Yeah.
having ideas to how we should solve it just practically. Um, I think we're just going to do as we usually do, we just talk about the major points of the thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're going to talk about the Brandon Sanderson class in August. So if you're interested in that, call in. We'd love to hear from you. And we're
Love that.
doing that in August. Thank you so much for being in, Malin. Thank you so much for chat, for engaging. Um, and I think that's it. You got any parting words?
Nope, I'm gonna tag along to your next two Tuesday streams, so see you guys then.
See you next Tuesday. We're gonna play the cowboy outro for the last time, so you might want to savor this, or you might want to close the tab immediately. I don't know your life. But yeah, for the last time in a while, the cowboy solo outro. Bye
Yeah.
bye.